Thanks for joining me as I travel the world, going from fine dining through to street food and local specialties, all in an effort to find the world's best seafood. Hi folks, apologies, it's been so long between videos on world's best seafood, but I'm going to make it up for you tonight in maybe the most special meal of my life. The most outrageous thing I've ever done for food was I flew to Copenhagen 4 or 5 years ago to go to Noma. It was, and still is, the best fine dining experience I've ever had. Best service, best atmosphere, and the best flavor of food. I found out that they're going to shut down, but before that, they're doing a 10-week residency in Kyoto, Japan. So I put my name down on the waiting list because it was already sold out. Got a place come through on the spur of the moment, booked a ticket to Kyoto, and we're going there tonight. It's by far the most expensive meal I've ever had in my life, but we're celebrating an anniversary and I can't wait. Let's go.
Is there anything that we may put in the wardrobe for you? Maybe?
So you can see the restaurant is quite well spaced out. The only space I was able to get was at a shared table. No idea of who you're going to be sitting with or how big the table was. But I have to say it ended up being a highlight of the night.
Do you not have any allergies?
That's right.
You would both like to drink the sake and wine pairing.
No, we had one juice, one wine.
One of each? Okay. Planning going into something like this is quite lengthy, and we're very excited to share with you what we've done in the last years. With that, I'm also not going to say too much or bombard you with too much information, and let the experience flow and speak a little bit for itself. Have all of your drinks and allergies confirmed. I hope you're going to enjoy your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5 dishes, starting with the one closest to you in the brown bowl. That is yuba, which is the skin that you get on top of the soy milk when making tofu. Finish that with grilled ramsons, and then from there please move clockwise, following one being a barley cake which was fermented and grilled and finished with red ginger. Right on top you have semi-dried tomato filled with strawberries and kiwis, finished with nasturtium petals. Next one is cherry leaf, which we finished with black garlic. And finally a gel of tomato, which is finished with bee pollen and rose oil. First one and the last one to be eaten with the spoon, and the other 3 in the middle with your hands, preferably in one bite.
Look, the first dishes were what I was kind of expecting. It was their take on some classics, using local ingredients but presented in a really flavoursome way. The yuba was great, and Kyoto is famous for yuba. The koji cake with ginger was also really tasty. The dried tomato flour was outstanding. That may be the best, one of the top things of the whole night in my opinion. The cherry leaf with black garlic, to be honest, it was how it sounds. I'm sure a lot of technique went into it, but it wasn't particularly appealing to me. And the pollen gel, I don't know. Some people love bee pollen. I know it's exotic, I know it's fancy, I know it's rare, but it didn't do a whole lot for me either.
Hey guys, for your next serving here, would have a seaweed shabu shabu. Now shabu shabu normally you would have thin slices of meat that gets cooked for a few seconds in a hot broth. Here instead of meat.
What can I say about this dish without being childish? I really feel like this is a let's just come in and try and change things for the sake of changing them. Believe me, I'm not saying that I wish this had been traditional beef shabu shabu just because I'm a white guy and we rather eat beef than vegetables. Some of the best meals I've had in my life were in Japan and were vegetable only, just like raw vegetables straight from the kitchen's garden with simple sauces. Unbelievable. But looking at this, the little pieces of seaweed, the broth that I'm sure again there was so many different techniques went into making it, it just wasn't delicious. And I was at one time thinking, for how many covers they do a night, how much seaweed are they getting in to get these tiny little pieces that are all perfectly cute and the right size and stuff? What waste? And then on the other hand thinking, well, it's just seaweed, does it really matter if it's being wasted? But then why is it on such an expensive menu in place of beef, which is also one of Japan's star standout ingredients? It's going to come down to personal taste, but for me the bamboo shoots in squid broth was really tasty. I happen to love bamboo shoot, so for me this dish was a total winner. My wife isn't a fan of bamboo shoot and, no surprise, wasn't a fan of the dish either.
This now is a serving of swordfish belly.
Oh.
So in Japan there's obviously a large tradition of eating tuna. We found that the swordfish belly has a cleaner flavour and less in fat. It's served with a sauce made with seaweed, we make a seaweed salt with butter and what's called kinki, it's a type of fish from Hokkaido. Make a stock from the heads. It's all in the sauce. So I usually just drag it through the sauce.
Great.
Skeleton of it is the same, but like with your first dish that I was explaining how you have some micro seasons that last for only 4 or 5 days. You do need to change certain elements of it.
Got it. Next up, the swordfish belly. Beautiful sauce, amazing piece of fish, simply presented. How could you go wrong? Well, they didn't. It was a nice dish, but I've had swordfish at much cheaper restaurants served in traditional Japanese ways that are the match of this. Maybe the fish wasn't from some tiny, you've never heard of it, family-owned boutique artisanal business and it was just from the normal fish market. But again, nice dish, but I wouldn't, pick this out of a lineup for being a 3 Michelin star dish. The tofu and wild almonds was nice. Again, Kyoto is quite famous for their tofu. This was a nice, refreshing dish. The different teas and juices that I was served, some I thought paired really nicely, others I didn't really feel matched that well at all. And considering you have no choice, you have to take a drink option and it adds 300 euros to the price, I have to say the few juices and teas that I had, I felt like I got ripped off being a non-drinker. The kinky fish is a rockfish, so nicely presented there, literally among the rocks. It was beautiful, delicate, nothing to complain about other than would have been nice to have a little more of it. Next up is the steak course, which of course is not a steak. It is made of lotus root. This was tasty, and again, I'm sure all served on hard to find artisanal plates and dishes and everything. But again, about the same standard as you would expect at any $20 restaurant around the corner.
We continue now with the serving of sansa. So mountain vegetables.
Ooh.
We cook these all really quickly in a butter emulsion made with rose pizza, which we smoked here from Copenhagen. And then it's finished with a sauce that's made from the isa ebi, which is spiny lobster. We use just the brain in the serving. This is the start of the sequence based around the isa ebi.
Now this dish with the spiny lobster brain sauce, the sauce was a masterclass. You can tell you're in a fine dining restaurant by tasting that sauce. I'm sure each of the different vegetables has been picked and harvested, and they talked about microclimates that only last 5 or 7 days and they're always changing out ingredients and all of that kind of thing. It was nice, but as I say, I've been to just simple vegetarian restaurants in Japan that cost maybe 5 to 10% of this dinner that were more flavoursome and more clear expressions of the ingredient than this was. It does feel a little bit the mix of traditional Scandinavian cooking techniques and avant-garde cooking techniques, let's be fair, and all of their fermentation and stuff paired with simple, clean ingredients. Sometimes it's a home run and it really elevates it. Other times, I feel like it's a waste of time. I have to say at this point in the meal, when I had flown my wife over specially for a special treat menu, and I'm trying not to think about how eye-wateringly expensive this dinner was, I was starting to lose my mood a little bit because I just wasn't enjoying the food that much. I'm really glad that it turned out we were sitting at the communal table because the people near us were having a similar kind of experience. You know, again, we got told all about the cutlery that was coming and how special and rare it was and that kind of thing. And we were all kind of having a nice little joke about how, yes, all of this technique has gone into it, but was it really worth it? Like their take on the centuries-old tradition of getting a piece of bonito and drying it right out to make the flakes, to make your special broth for Japanese cooking, here using corn and eggplant and pumpkin instead. It's kind of a, okay, you could do it, but do you need to do it? It's not better. It's a lot of hard work and it's not better. It's even not as good. I went out to the bathroom, and as I came back through, had a little look at the kitchen. It was kind of disappointing that no one in our share room was offered the opportunity to go and take a look at the kitchen or any of the parts of the restaurant, which was a highlight when I dined at the original restaurant in Copenhagen. Next up here is the meat of the spiny lobster, the issei ebe, which was we had the brain sauce with the vegetables before. This was the first hint that we were getting what you would classically think of as fine ingredients, kind of the whole night. Well, I guess you can think of bee pollen and, rare seaweed as being exotic ingredients as well, I suppose. The green rice with roses. Again, I'm sure it's special rice that I should be really honored to have been able to try, but it just wasn't that tasty. It didn't give you that umami kick or that stodgy fill you up at the end of the fine dining meal that came with no bread. It felt like kind of unwashed, undercooked rice with rose petals. And I passed on the opportunity to have seconds despite still being hungry. Several times during the night, our server Miko, who was lovely by the way, mentioned in passing how difficult it was to move, to leave family behind, to work so hard in a different country without much time to do sightseeing, and how a lot of the staff didn't really enjoy doing these kind of placements. Indeed, it's why they're planning to change the business model to do less of this in the future. And part of me was struck, who is this for? Because it doesn't feel like they're adding value in the same way that they do, say, in their own kitchen, transforming amazing Scandinavian ingredients and taking them to the next level. Essentially, it doesn't feel like a synergy here. Their masterful skills and the world-class ingredients aren't being elevated to something worthy of the price and stature, in my opinion. Finally, some desserts, the little shimiji clams, tasty, kind of forgettable. The dried strawberry with mochi was actually outstanding and delicious. The egg fruit, interesting, creamy. None of them though like finishing the evening on a wow. I guess the strawberry would have been up there. If I look at the whole menu, then I would say the strawberry, the kinky, the lobster, and the tomato flour were all really, really nice dishes, but none of them were really memorable or that I would go back for. At the end of the night, we were all offered coffee or cocktails or a whiskey, that kind of thing. Again, I don't drink. I thought having paid 300 euros, maybe this was included in the drinks package that we had prepaid. Turns out it wasn't, so the mocktail that I got ended up being another 30 or 40 euros on top of the meal. So, after all of that, the shared table worked out great. We were sitting next to some really fun people, and that kind of made the overall experience really enjoyable. A little bit disappointing we didn't get to meet the chef or get taken to the kitchen or anything like that like we did when we're in the Copenhagen store. Overall, you have to say every dish was immaculate and so complex and beautiful. And when you factor in that they brought the entire team over and their families and they're accommodating them all and their kids in school and everything, kind of makes sense to the price. But if you just look at the satisfaction of the food to the price, I have to say I think it was the most overpriced meal that I've ever had. Whereas I would say Noma, the original that we went, even though it was expensive, was probably the best. So I don't know, I kind of feel like, and when we went to Inua, which was their sister restaurant in Tokyo before, it's kind of the same. How's the right way to put it? They're obviously masters in putting together these dishes, but it really does feel like being complicated for the sake of being complicated, when Japanese have been using these ingredients for hundreds of years and got it refined down to such a clean, simple way of presenting the food, and then they're like, but let's get the rarest of this and the most exotic of that, and then ferment it for 6 months and do all of this stuff. I don't feel like it added to the enjoyment or the flavor. The dinner we had last night for 1/10 of the price, I think, was overall more satisfying, even though this was technically really impressive. So if you're a super foodie and a Noma fan, then if you can get a table, go for it. But I don't know that it's worth a special trip. For me, that Michelin guide of 3 stars being worth making a special trip to go wasn't there for me tonight. But an enjoyable evening, and I hope you enjoyed this video for World's Best Seafood. Leave me your thoughts. I'll see you soon. Oh, and the reason we're filming this in a 7-Eleven is because I'm not nearly full, so it's rice ball and chicken breast time on the walk back to our hotel. I would say I'm about 35% full and really kind of still starving, seeing it's almost 11 p.m. In terms of the damage, this one is going to leave some lasting damage. This costs €775 per person plus 10% tax. So that comes in at around $925. Once you add in my mocktail, that brings it up to about $960 per person. And I have to say, it just wasn't a remarkable experience.